In this video, we'll give you a summary of Michael Jackson's early life and rise to fame up until joining the record label Motown. For more videos on Michael and other celebs, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. So let's dive in and find out the beginnings of the man in the mirror. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. That would make him a Virgo, and like many people born under the sign, Michael was a perfectionist. His mother worked at a department store and his father worked at a steel mill. Music was a way for them both to unwind from their stressful jobs, and they passed on their passion for music to their children. By the time he was 5 years old, Michael was already in the music industry, although too young to fully understand what was going on. Originally, his father, Joe, managed and performed his own band, the Falcons. He had an electric guitar which he had kept in a special cupboard that the children were forbidden to open, but they secretly played on the guitar, and one day, Joe came home to find that one of the strings had broke. Instead of immediately punishing his children, he challenged them to play it. Seeing that they were actually trying to practice music and not use the instrument as a toy, Joe decided to make them into musicians. Older siblings Tito, Jackie, and Jermaine began to take lessons and practice openly under the guidance of their father, and Catherine, the mother of the children, later convinced Joe that Michael was a good singer and could play the bongos. Joe went from managing and performing his own band to managing a band in which his children performed, and which was called the Jacksons. Why had Joe placed so much trust in his children and not punish them for breaking one of the guitar strings? He was a tough man who beat his kids for misbehaving, just as his own father did. Tito had been crying when his father found the broken string, but when Joe found out that they had respect for the instrument, he got Tito his own guitar and other professional musical instruments for family members, who were able to practice and perform as musicians. Even though money was tight, he saw these purchases as an investment and trained the kids hard. He was a harsh taskmaster who made his children rehearse daily for hours and would beat them if they played a wrong note or didn't do something right. But unlike many other managers of child stars, Joe did not abuse the rewards of his children's talent. Instead, he invested their earnings wisely so that they were financially secure when they grew up. Michael had a natural talent at singing. When he sang "Climb Every Mountain" in elementary school, he entranced the audience, showing tiny snapshots of what he would be capable of delivering later. He was so talented at such a young age that he replaced Jermaine as the lead singer for the Jacksons. Although he just started out with bongos, before long, young Michael was the lead singer, as well as a choreographer and costume designer. Although he was much older, Joe put a lot of faith in trusting the artistic choices of his young band members, as long as the performance was spotless. When Michael was 9, the group had been performing at sleazy nightclubs, many of which had strippers, as well as the so-called Chitlin circuit of venues, which showcased black-only performers. They got their name from the serving of chitterlings, which are carefully prepared pig intestines as well as other soul food. The Jacksons were also seasoned talent competition performers and had their own microphones to practice on at home, so they had the extra advantage of being comfortable on a public stage. All of this professional success came at a cost to Michael and his siblings. They were just kids after all, and prior to becoming famous, they went to a normal public school. When people started to know who they were, Michael could no longer go for knocking for the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the kids had to transfer to a private school. But even before all the fame, these children had a mountain of responsibility on their tiny shoulders. These kids were already familiar with strippers and have often seen female nudity. Venues with strippers were still subject to forbidding minors to be present, but no officers knew about it or batted an eyelid over it. In fact, there was a rumor going around that no one as small as Michael could be that talented, and that he must be a midget pretending to be a child. The children's schedule was jam-packed. Usually all you expect kids to do is eat their breakfast, brush their teeth, go to school, and maybe do some homework before setting off to the park to spend the rest of their afternoon playing. This typical childhood experience was something that Michael only glimpsed vicariously while he was rehearsing at the Motown studios. That brings us to the next part of our video. The Jacksons got their first major break when they got a shot at amateur night in the famous New York Apollo Theater, which meant that the group would get much more attention and acclaim, as it was the same theater music legends such as Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong had performed. It was also an opportunity for the young Michael to hone his performing skills, as the Jacksons worked alongside contemporary legends, who Michael adored and imitated. One of these legends was James Brown, who asked to meet the little boy who was crouched in the wings of the theater, watching him perform. One of Michael's special talents was that he could imitate any other performer and not just copy their movements, but innovate on them. He was obsessed from an early age by being the best, and it showed. Michael would go on to get a lot of inspiration from Fred Astaire, because they were both the rare kind of performer who could dance and sing at the same time. The only thing that might have put a dent into Michael's excitement and dedication to his craft was that the style-conscious youngster's feet were too small to wear patent leather shoes like his beloved fellow performers who were fully grown. He coveted the particular shine of this shoe style, because as you were dancing, the show lights reflect off the surface of the shoes, adding an extra little effect to the performance. Michael was such a prodigy that he did not need those patent leather shoes, although they would later become an indispensable part of his iconic moonwalk. Winning amateur night at the Apollo 3 times in a row was significant, and the fact that Joe knew this illustrated his forward-thinking strategy as a band manager. In the short term, it meant that the Jacksons could come back to the Apollo for paid gigs. In the long term, it meant so much more. Michael himself described the opportunity to perform at the Apollo as a date with destiny. Although he was being a little dramatic, he was absolutely right. This opportunity meant that before long, Motown would sign them in for a contract, and the small family band now were in the big leagues. Being successful musicians meant that Michael Jackson and his family were not only financially secure, but could look forward to a bright future, full of more opportunities. Michael owed his success equally to his mother's love, the discipline his father instilled in him, and his God-given natural talents. To Michael, those years of toil on the Chitlin circuit were like being in a game of Monopoly. Apollo Theater was his park lane, and Motown was the boardwalk. After their contract with Motown started, the Jackson family went to live in California. Michael loved being in America's Sunshine State. There was Disneyland, Sunset Boulevard, and a whole host of new talented celebrity role models who shared valuable skills with the eager young Michael. In his autobiography, Michael mentions Diana Ross from The Supremes in particular. Not only did she help the family settle into Southern California by letting them stay at her home, she fostered a love of visual art in Michael by buying art supplies and visiting museums with him. Of course, being a major record label that had not signed on a child band before, Motown impressed on the Jacksons that they had to maintain a socially acceptable front to the public. This meant always doing their homework and having good manners, despite everything that they had been exposed to at some of their shadier venues. There's always a flip side to the coin that is success, and for the Jacksons, this flip side was growing up in the shadow of fame. Michael did not have a normal upbringing, and while his success as a performer protected him from mundane pursuits like getting an entry-level job or looking after a small apartment, he has different challenges like negotiating with record labels or handling press scrutiny. Security and privacy are also things, as a celebrity, you need to put a lot of resources into. As a famous person, Michael grew up in the kind of unusual world which celebrities live in because their particular talents are in such high demand. Thankfully for Michael, his experiences growing up famous and dedicated to his art allowed him to bond with others who had grown up as a child star, especially Elizabeth Taylor, who remarked in her autobiography that a child in the entertainment industry is vulnerable to abuse from anyone, even close family members who act in guardian roles and control the wealth that the child star earns. While Joe never swindled his children out of their hard-earned money, do you think it was wrong for him to have exposed them to so many adult things at such young ages? Feel free to make a comment down below. But as always, be sure to keep discussions civil so that we can keep the forum enjoyable for everyone. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.